Cancer is an extremely important topic to me, and it's something I've researched in depth a whole lot with my son's journey. And one of those that I have followed for years is gonna be Zahrah. She is a functional alternative kind of health practitioner. She has a wonderful package of knowledge that crosses a lot of different disciplines, and she is very well thought of. This is something I really wish that I would have had early on in our journey, and I really hope it adds value to you if you or anybody you know has ever been diagnosed with cancer. Hi, Zahrah. I'm really glad that we are able to do this. I've been following your work for years now, I guess since probably early 2020, maybe late 19. When my little boy was diagnosed with cancer, it just led me down a journey of discovery that I think that you understand all too well. And so if you don't care, just give me a little intro on what you do now and how you got there.
Okay, so what I do now is I have my own private practice, and I work helping people who have health issues. I do consulting and coaching and help them create a healing journey for themselves that works for what it is that they are trying to achieve. Primarily, I would say that the majority of the people that I work with have cancer. But that's not all. I mean, I work with people with Lyme disease and autoimmune issues and gut issues and all kinds of stuff. But it's just kind of grown organically over the years. Really, ever since I had cancer, I started receiving a lot more people coming into my practice, seeking help with that. Before all of that, before my private practice, which I've had for a long time, but it was really kind of part-time, up until maybe the last 5-6 or so years. I have background in various fields in the holistic realm of healing. So traditional Chinese medicine, herbalism, nutrition, neurofeedback, holistic detoxification. And so I've worked in a lot of various realms as far as clinical practice, working in wellness centers, retreat centers, in various ways of working more out in the public. And then I just kind of transitioned because I found that I could actually work better, more one-on-one, and do things in a little bit more broad spectrum way and reach more people actually by working privately, which a lot of people didn't understand. They thought I'd be able to reach more people private or in clinics and things like that. But actually I feel like I have more reach in my private practice. So yeah, because everything is mostly online that you're able to, work with anybody anywhere. Exactly. Yeah, I work all over the world. I work from home. My office is in my home, but I work with people all over the world, like Dubai, India, China, Europe, Mexico. All over the place. And so that's the beauty of Zoom. And I think that the pandemic and during COVID and all that, it really helped people realize that we can connect better there. And so I was able to work through all of that where many of us were working from home.
Yeah, it definitely brought in a lot of things, good, bad, and different. COVID changed the world. So what I would like to start with is kind of focus on that cancer topic, right? And then, so what do you believe is kind of that fundamental cause of cancer? Do you have?
That's a question I get asked a lot. I would say that so I can answer it in a very simple way, and that could also be expanded in a very complex way, which is I believe that most cases of cancer nowadays, what we're dealing with are environmental causes, meaning that there are influences outside of the self from the environment, where we live, what we encounter, what we do on a regular basis that are creating changes within the body that leave us with a propensity for various diseases, including cancer. So that could be pollution, it could be the accumulation of heavy metals, it could be the use of pesticides and fungicides and those things on our food and in our environment. I could go on and on. It could be many factors, including stress. And so very few cases of cancer, less than 5%, are actually genetic. So that means it's lifestyle, environmental, or something that's not inherent within our DNA or within our genes. And so my sense is we're just living in a world with a lot of challenges, a lot of toxicity, a lot of pathogens, a lot of pollution. And I don't mean to make it sound really bad. It's just a reality. And there's a lot of really good things too. But that is a reality. And so when we get an accumulation of all those things happening in our system without removing them or understanding how to change things, it can derange our cells. It can create mutations and changes within our bodies that leave us kind of like with weak links where our immune system isn't functioning at its highest. So things like cancer can develop. And so that's my take on it. And so it's not like one thing. There's a lot of things. You know, one person, they could have had chemical exposure. For somebody else, it could have been years of some kind of medication that was changing things in their body. For another person, it could have been stress. Or somebody, it could have been all those things and something else, you know.
Absolutely. I think that I agree wholeheartedly with that. And it very much parallels or supports. We recently talked with Dr. Thomas Seyfried on the metabolic approach to cancer, and I mean he's almost verbatim what you said. And so on that, one of the things that Dr. Seyfried has said is, cancer can't survive without glucose and the amino acid glutamine. Mm-hmm. And so does that play into how you recommend or how you work with people on overcoming disease?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So understanding, I mean, that's something I try to teach the people I work with, is it's really important to have the knowledge and understanding of how does not only cancer develop, but how does it live? Because it's a very tenacious organism, so to speak. It wants to survive, and it'll do many, many strange things to try and survive, unlike other cells in our body. And so, yes, there are these metabolic pathways, and there are different, what I would say, food or fuel sources for cancer cells that are different than the normal healthy cells. Now, normal healthy cells also rely on glucose. Glucose is important to us, but glucose becomes something very different for cancer cells. And then, yes, glutamine, I would say glucose and glutamine are the primary food sources, but cancer also loves iron. Cancer will also eat its own dead cells. So as if you're using things to kill cancer in the body, you also got to include something that's going to remove dead cells, because cancer will use those as food and fuel. Like I said, it's very tenacious, opportunistic type of organism. And beyond that, then there's other things, like say for somebody who has prostate cancer or an estrogen-driven breast cancer, then the hormones become a factor. And in some cases, there are viral factors that are playing into that. Like there are certain cancers that are driven by, say, the HPV virus or the Epstein-Barr virus. I have dealt with Epstein-Barr virus, and I believe it was one of the drivers in the cancer that I had. And so, there are all these certain factors, and that's where I do like to meet with people privately, because then I can tailor things and give them recommendations that are really specific to their own individual situation.
Incredible. I think that with understanding that metabolic and toxicity component, or even deficiencies, is very important. And you bring a great point with the hormones. With some of the relatively recent studies coming out, I want to say it was maybe 2021 out of Israel, with a biopsy of every cancer had fungus in it. It was just kind of eye-opening with that. And you are very well versed in a realm of a fungicide in Fenbendazol, but that's not all that it does. So I definitely want to get your take, which I would, I guess, have to say that Joe Tippins is kind of the one that made that something that a lot of people in the alternative world have heard about, but you and that group have really kind of refined that protocol to where, it may be even more effective.
Oh, yeah. And I don't say this as any disrespect to Joe, but it is more effective. And he didn't, bless him. And I'm really grateful that he had good success, but he didn't really know what he was doing. Someone said, here, take this stuff, like take it 3 days a week. Here's, and he did a little research on some things, and he took a couple other things, and he was really blessed to have the success that he had, because very few people have had success trying to follow exactly what he did. And there's, again, getting into the science part of it, using Fenbendazol at the dosage that he was using, he actually used a really low dose, super low dose, like the amount that would be recommended for like a 5 to 10 pound body. And so it was great that he had results. And so we've seen that like by adjusting that dose and using higher doses for the adult human body, we see better results. Yeah. And then the fungus part of it, like I have been saying this for years and years. I mean, going way back before I actually ever learned about Fenbendazol, is that there is this like symbiotic relationship between fungus and cancer. And I've just sensed it inherently. There's not a lot of research on it. And I was so excited actually last year. I can't remember who published the study, but they basically proved it. They showed that cancer likes to collect fungus around itself, and it creates this kind of fungal wall, so to speak. And it creates an environment that cancer thrives and also protects it. So when we can include something that breaks through that fungal wall and kills the fungus, such as Fenbendazol. So Fenbendazol kills cancer cells, parasites, as well as fungus. And so it can get in there easier. And then we have better results. You know, we see better results with people because sometimes, you know, fungus and viruses can be playing in the background and kind of hijacking the immune system and creating a lot of problems for success when someone's trying to heal. So if we can include things that address those issues as well, we get better results.
And just for clarification for anybody else that's listening, is that Fenbendazole is actually a veterinary drug, a dewormer, whereas the human version is Mebendazole.
Yeah.
But there is a pretty substantial little difference between the two, isn't there?
There's a difference. Yeah. I mean, Fenbendazole was originally created for animals, and I just want to add this in because I sometimes forget it, and I just remembered it, and I think it's an important point, is that when Merck is the company that developed Fenbendazole originally. And when they were in the developmental stage of Fenbendazole, one of their researchers actually started taking it, and she had brain cancer. She saw something in the research that made her believe that it was a good idea to take it, and she ended up healing cancer using Fenbendazole. And that was back in like the late 60s or 70s or something like that. And I don't know exactly the diagnosis. The information's kind of vague, but it's out there, and I've come across it on a number of occasions. So granted, what I'm trying to say is they've known about the anti-cancer benefits of Fenbendazole for a long time, but they classified it as a veterinary medicine for the treatment of parasites. And then Mebendazole was classified as the human version of it for parasites. The difference between the two, if you're looking at the molecular structure of Fenbendazole and Mebendazole, is Fenbendazole contains an atom of sulfur. That's the big difference there. And so I mean, they're both useful, and some people in some parts of the world can only access Mebendazole. I would tell them by all means, use it if that's all you can get. If you can get Fenbendazole, I think it's a little better because of that sulfur that tends to have a higher antifungal component to it, and also kills some viruses and bacteria in a way that Mebendazole doesn't.
That's really neat. Some of the other things that it does, if you don't care to go into that, from, you know, even the anti-angiogenic component, and just like there's a lot of compelling, proof out there that it's worth at least considering.
Yeah, and I'll just say to that, as far as considering, like we see now, like was it John Hopkins and several other kind of big name medical institutions, you know, that have a lot of respect, have been doing research on Mebendazole and Fenbendazole in the treatment of cancer with really good results. They've done studies on prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, etc. MD Anderson, which is a really well-known, highly esteemed like cancer center down in Texas, they did a whole study on it, and then they set up a whole program like where they wanted to include it. It got shut down. It's, you know, there's a lot of politics in the medical world, and there's a lot of things behind the scenes that don't always allow things to get, you know, pushed through, but they were having success. And that's what these studies out of these other places showed. As far as what does Fenbendazole do, it kills a wide variety of parasites, a very wide variety of parasites. And it also, like I said, it can kill fungus and certain viruses and bacteria. But when it comes to cancer, one of the main things that it's doing is it's targeting this part of the cancer cell that is called the microtubulin. And the microtubulin is basically how cancer cells get their food. And so if I always describe it like this, because I like to try and make like parables and simplification of things for people to understand. But if you could think of it like this, like as like a cancer cell has a feeding tube, and it's sucking in the food and fuel through that feeding tube. That's kind of like what the microtubulin is. It's how it gets that food and that fuel into the cell. And so what Fenbend does is it targets that part of the cancer cell and it paralyzes it. It shuts it down. And so it's causing a starvation of the cancer cells. That's the primary thing it's doing. But it will block some of the glucose uptake to the cancer cells. Again, it's primarily a glucose fueled cell. That's its first and favorite food. So it's limiting, again, it's a starvation thing. It's limiting the food and the fuel to the cancer cell by blocking the glucose uptake. It's also been found to kill what's called the cancer stem cells. And cancer stem cells are different than cancer cells. They are, as I describe them, the seeds of the cancer. They are the main cause of metastasis. They're the main cause of drug and treatment resistance. So if something's working as far as treatment goes, it stops working. A lot of times that's what we call treatment resistance, where cancer stem cells have inspired that cancer cell to basically mutate itself and change course and get away from what it was, what treatment was working. It also, other than the cancer stem cells, the microtubulin and the glucose factor, it also has been shown to help heal our damaged mitochondria, which is our cellular energy, which is necessary. And I can tell you this, if we didn't have mitochondria, we would not be alive. So aging is linked to primarily mitochondrial dysfunction or lack of mitochondria action in our body. And so we need that mitochondria for our immune system, for our energy, for our health, for our longevity, for our life. And so Fenbend helps with that. And so those are the main things. And it's also said to induce apoptosis, which is the death of cancer cells, like the self-suicide of cancer cells. So it's doing a lot of different things on the cancer front. And it's really fascinating because it doesn't harm your healthy cells. It doesn't accumulate in your body. It's pretty much, it's got a half-life. It's a bit argued on the exact timing. So they say between 3 and 6 hours of a half-life. That means if you stop it within 24 hours, it's cleared. It's out of your system. It's not going to accumulate and it's not going to do damage to your system. It's actually a really, really well tolerated and safe medicine. And there's been a lot of testing on animals, even where they've given them ridiculously high amounts that I don't like it when they do these tests, but they do them and we can look at it and we can see, oh, it's got a really big safety margin. It's not killing these animals even at 20, 50 times the amount that is necessary.
Wow. In some of those studies, are you seeing to where they are using the Fenbend with traditional treatments, and what's the effect there?
Yeah, there's been some study with that, not a whole lot. There was a study that, and I posted it in our big private group last year sometime, and it was a while back, but they took a group of people, it was a small study, and they all had cancer, they all had the same cancer, I think it was lung cancer, and they were all receiving chemotherapy, and half of them got Fenbendazol and half of them did not. The group that got Fenbendazol had far better results, way better outcomes, less side effects, all of that. And so that was one study that we can look at. There was another study that was published a year or so ago, and it's kind of recirculating lately. I've seen it. I have a copy of it here from Oncology News, where they showed Fenbendazole alongside, this isn't as much about conventional treatments, but alongside some basic nutrients that you would find in a multivitamin, shows higher efficacy at killing cancer. But we can see, if we look at what's happening, so, I'm an admin in a big private group with 75,000 people in there right now. It's grown a lot over the last few years. And we get a lot of people who are curious and interested in starting to use these types of things for the treatment of cancer. Many of them are receiving chemotherapy, immunotherapy, radiation. These are the classic kind of standard of care treatments that are offered. And they're doing all this along with a whole long laundry list of, supplements and other things that they're taking, vitamins, herbs, etc. And the reality is they're getting so much better results than the people who just stick with only the conventional treatments. And we see it time and time again. We get people who were told, you have a year to live, or there's no cure, you're going to be on chemo for life and it's just going to extend your life. These are things, coming out of conventional oncology. And then we have people who, don't take, just their recommendations, but expand that. And they include these alternative protocols, and they're, defying what was shown to them as the prognosis for their future, such as, you only have a year to live. Well, here they are several years later thriving with no cancer in their body, or they're told, there's no cure and we're just going to prolong your life. And they get to what we call no evidence of disease. There's no evidence of any disease in their body. And we see this time and time again at a really incredible rate. And so, that's part of my fascination and dedication to sharing that information with people. It's a viable means to help them improve their condition, and it's helping a lot of people.
You're so right on how many people are successfully applying these things, and that's what I've become incredibly frustrated with. That it's kind of poo-pooed on, right? It's like this. It doesn't really matter. Eat whatever you want, do whatever you want. There's nothing you can do but chemo, radiation, and surgery, and it's just really frustrating. Now I find it very difficult through our situation to kind of over tell anybody what they should or shouldn't do. So like what Lander did have chemo, radiation, surgery, 16 rounds. And so we didn't know anything going into it. And I was not very far into, the journey with following your work and a lot of others when we did that. And I don't know if I would have done anything different, but I do know he went stage 4 to cancer-free in 8 months, and we changed everything, right? And we did a lot of stuff, not everything, but a lot. And so with that, it's just, you kind of look back onto how we started this topic of how did you get cancer, right? What happened? And Laura, what I have found and what I believe is, like, I think it's my fault, like he got cancer, is because I did not know, and it was my ignorance on understanding things and not diving in. And so when he was born, he had reflux really bad. So we were told to give him this special formula and then rice cereal. And then looking back, and I had just built a little house where we spray foamed that he was raised in. He wasn't breastfed, had a little later, he was a little older, but had a vaccine reaction where it shut off the bile production of his liver, and he pooped chalk white. So we can just start adding these things up. And now I know and understand the MTHFR and the methylation and the lack of being able to detox the heavy metals that I put in him, right, through the choices that we did. And then as he got older, just not having a great diet. So with that, I think I completely, through, again, ignorance, messed up his metabolism, right? Like, so the heavy metals, the just, Lord, he could have been a diabetic for all I know, looking back at it now. But with that, we did, he was fasting at every time he received chemo. Right, he was in a fasted stage, so the insulin-potentiated chemotherapy. We did all these little bitty things that matter a whole lot, and that's the reason that I want to do these type of interviews, is because if we can share that information and something as simple as get your regular treatment, whatever your oncologist says, and apply some stuff, you can have better results. If you want to go another route, that at least there's that awareness too. So, what are the very first things that you would recommend? What's that first step for somebody that receives, a life-changing diagnosis?
Oh, I think the first thing to do is take a little time and process it, and then start to work on, and this is, I'd say this is more for adults. It's a little more challenging to guide young children in this, and I work with a lot of young kids. But we can still teach them as best as we can, is just really working with the mindset, having a vision of healing and understanding that we can heal, and just diving as much as that person can into positive stories, positive outcomes, uplifting themselves, because it's a hard hit. So that's the first step, I'd say. When people ask me because I had cancer, I've been cancer-free 15 years, and people ask me, well, what'd you do? I want to know what you did. And I say the number one first thing I did was I decided that I was going to heal cancer, and I never wavered from that. It wasn't like a battle within myself to stay on that path. It was just like, I am doing this. I have a reason to live. I have young children. I have my own life. I have my own purpose. I'm going to do this. And I just kept it there, and then bring in the action of the physical work. And so on that I would say that's the mental kind of emotional adjusting that needs to be done. It's one thing, take some time, deal with it, process. It's a shock. Now get yourself up and get focused and keep a positive mindset and do the work you need to do once you get through that initial shock. And so beyond that, I'd say the next step is take a look at your home, take a look at everything you put in your body, on your body, and is existing in your home. Clean it up, get every single possible chemical problem out of your home. If you have, bath and body products with a bunch of parabens and phthalates and all the other crap that can be in there, get rid of it. If you're using commercial cleaning products, laundry soaps, whatever, get rid of it. Everything. Like, really do an inventory and change your lifestyle as much as possible. If you're drinking tap water, start purifying it, or buy it purified or something, whatever you got to do to change everything that you can possibly change that could be possibly impacting your health. And then from there, start researching. You talked about conventional medicine and ways to work through some of those treatments. And I teach people that a lot. Sometimes conventional medicine is necessary. I'm not like on either side of that whole argument of like, it can only be conventional or it can only be alternative. I'm more in the middle path of like, well, let's at least try to find an integrative path. If you want to go fully holistic, let's look at that. If you want to go fully conventional, I don't recommend it. I just don't see the best results without including the alternative holistic side of things. And do your research and stay informed. Be a student of what's happening to you. There's so much good information out there, but you got to look for it. You got to be open to it. And once you open those doors, it floods in. Most people that I'm meeting with, they tell me they're like, I'm becoming like a researcher. I'm becoming practically an expert in this illness. And I'm like, yeah, and it should be. You should know all about it because it's living inside of you. So you got to know all about it, and you got to know everything that you can do to save your life and get better.
Beautiful. I agree. I knew I would, but yeah, I love it because it's so actionable. Like, that mindset matters a lot. Just no doubt about it. And then the toxicities, and then addressing the deficiencies. When we've gone through it, it really has led me to understanding the mitochondria and metabolism. And based off of, Dr. Seyfried's work, it kind of transitions over to something that y'all have recommended for a while, and I've just now started really appreciating it, and that is melatonin. And so I've even talked to Dr. Russell Ryder, who would be the melatonin man. I think he's been studying 60 years. And Dr. Ryder has a new study. I will send you that if you haven't seen it. Yeah. And it is incredible. And it's I think 6 months old, published in July, I believe. And it's about metastasis and how melatonin comes in and just really helps clean up and just does some phenomenal things. But before, let me go back to you. Why do y'all recommend melatonin, and how do you do it? And help us understand what everybody thinks is simply a sleep hormone.
Yeah. Melatonin is so much more than a sleeping aid. I mean, it can. And usually the best influence on sleep is a low dose melatonin. I have many, many clients who are using high dose melatonin for cancer, and they don't sleep well on it at all. So, we have to understand it's a lot more. It's an antioxidant. It's connected to, our cognitive health. It's been shown as one of the things we can use to prevent cognitive decline, such as Alzheimer's, dementia, etc. It has this ability, when used at the right dosage, to kill cancer cells and, again, those cancer stem cells that I mentioned earlier. It has the ability to protect our healthy cells against radiation damage. There are so many things. It works on activating what's called the P53 expression. So P53 is a tumor suppressor gene that's also known as the keeper of the genetic code. It has a huge influence on our health and on our longevity and our ability to heal. And when it comes to cancer, we want that tumor suppression. But unfortunately, about 50% of cancer cases have what's called a TP53 mutation. And so that P53 is just not functioning properly. But melatonin, and there's other things too, Fenbendol actually helps with this some, and so does food grade iodine, that help with activating this P53, even if it's mutated. So it's doing a lot of things. There is a doctor that I really, really love his work. His name is Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt. He's out of Europe, and he's an MD who also very much leans on the holistic alternative side of things. Now, his history isn't cancer. His history is mostly he's been well known for dealing with issues of Lyme disease, autoimmune disorders, and autism. He has been using very high doses of melatonin as of recently, like within the last few years, and seeing these autistic children go from nonverbal to verbal. And so I think it's opening the door, all this new research, all this stuff coming in to show us that melatonin isn't just a sleeping aid. It's actually a really, really beneficial and crucial thing that can help us with so many issues. And during COVID, I'll say that Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt was also publishing his recommendations of protocols to protect and treat COVID, which included using melatonin as a preventative, like taking at least 20 milligrams of melatonin every day. And he did this whole charting and showed how it affects the respiratory system. And it's fascinating. Yeah. And so melatonin, I think, is an important thing for a lot of us, regardless of cancer. But if you have cancer, it can make a huge, huge difference. Dr. Doris Lowe is another one who's published a lot of research on this. And so like if we look at the Riordan Clinic up in Kansas, where Dr. Schallenberger used to work, and he's published a lot as well, they have been recommending at least 300 milligrams of that melatonin taken in divided doses for the anti-cancer benefits. Dr. Doris Lowe is publishing that she's seeing even better results when people use 1,000 milligrams and up. And that's what Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt was publishing too, is he was using around 1,000 milligrams with these kids and seeing dramatic results, using it. And so it's a very safe thing. I think that, we just have to rethink it and look at some of these studies to understand it and know that it's not just your simple over-the-counter, remedy for insomnia or sleep problems.
It's such a big deal. Yeah, Doris Lowe, she's also kind of gone down the whole redox and vitamin C. I've got a hard time wrapping my head around that one, but we're getting there. Maybe. Yeah. Something else I'm curious your take on, and I don't know that I've seen you speak to it much, is the cannabinoids. How does cannabis play in, or does it, with how you view cancer? And trying to find that common ground on, is there a metabolic connection?
There's definitely a lot of anti-cancer benefits with the various cannabis medicines. And so there's different ones. And I will say this is definitely not my expertise, but I know enough to speak on it. And I talk about it a lot with people. And I usually recommend they go talk to some people that I know that are more, that this is more their expertise. But in general, so we have, these two different, just to simplify it, the male and the female, the hemp plant and the marijuana plant. So from the hemp plant, there's a whole bunch of things. The most popular one is CBD. Most people have heard of CBD. It went through a lot of different, legislation over the years. It's now federally legal. You can buy it online. You can travel with it, et cetera, at least in the United States and a lot of other countries. And so if we look at CBD, and another one that I really like that there's been more research coming out on is CBG. And then there's also CBN. These, I'd say, were the most kind of popular ones from the hemp plant, and they each do something different. But they are known, like CBD and CBG prevent angiogenesis, where tumors kind of grow new, blood vessels, et cetera, and they expand themselves to grow outwards and create new networks. And so it's known to help preventing angiogenesis. And they both actually, I often recommend a CBD CBG formula, because they can help regenerate bones. And so when cancer's in the bones, it can cause crumbling and weakness in the bones. And so we don't want that to happen. A lot of people end up with like metal rods and hip replacements and things like that if it gets bad. So CBD and CBG can actually help with regenerating bone growth, and they're very, very good at that. CBG also kills cancer stem cells. They have a great benefit for like the nervous system, brain health, heart health, all kinds of stuff, anti-inflammatory benefits, et cetera. And then if we look at the marijuana plant, the female plant of the cannabis family, there are all, the THC is what we're looking at mostly. And there's all these strains, and there's various realms of, various degrees of THC content within things. But the main, so like if we look at THC in marijuana, history, we can see, okay, people have smoked it. They like the psychoactive effects. They like, how they feel when they have it. That's recreation. There's also edibles. A lot of people use edibles as recreation, but a lot of people use edibles as like a means of pain control, appetite induction, sleep, things like that. And so, but these aren't like smoking it and using those edibles. That's not really the anti-cancer medicine. They have some, I think, benefits for symptoms that people might be going through. Whereas the actual medicine is known as FECO, full extract cannabis oil, and very commonly called RSO, Rick Simpson oil. Rick Simpson was a man that used cannabis to heal himself, and he created this oil, and it got popularized, and people started calling it Rick Simpson oil. He doesn't like that. He's asked the public to stop calling it RSO, but it's such a phenomenon. I don't know how you're going to get people to stop it. But what it really is full extract cannabis oil, FECO, and it's very, very strong, powerful stuff. They make it, if you can imagine, this is a syringe. The syringe is full of this black, sticky cannabis kind of stuff. It's not a liquid. It's they call it oil, but it's not oil. It's sticky and just the tiniest little dot of it. They talk about using a rice-sized piece, and I will say, no, use less. If you're just starting, less than a rice-sized piece, a tiny little dot, it's powerful, and a person does end up, getting somewhat of a tolerance and more used to it, but it's very powerful at killing cancer cells and cancer stem cells. Crosses the blood-brain barrier. It's shown to be really effective, especially with brain cancers and blood cancers, but I've seen it do great for a lot of cancers, colon, lung, liver, all kinds of stuff. So it can be a really, really beneficial thing for sure. Getting around the psychoactive effects for some people is challenging. And so thankfully there is a method of using this type of medicine where you can make it into a suppository where you'll get the medicine circulating through your system, killing cancer cells, etc., but you don't get the psychoactive effects. So that's what I end up usually recommending for a lot of people. I would say that about 75% of the people that I meet with and talk to who have tried these medicines, the FECO RSO, don't tolerate it enough. So they have to do suppositories because otherwise they're not able to work or drive or parent or whatever it is they do on a regular basis.
So they're just not getting the psychoactive. They're not getting high basically by being able to utilize the suppository.
So if one of the things that they want or some of the things they want is the help that it can give to your appetite or for pain relief or sleep, they're not going to get that in a suppository. So some people will take suppositories all throughout the day and then maybe take an oral dosing at night because it helps them sleep. But yeah, in general, if it's not being metabolized through the liver as it is when you take it orally, it won't create that high or the psychoactive effects.
One more thing I would like to just kind of briefly hit on that I'm just trying to comprehend is DMSO. That is something that seems to really pop up a lot in the alternative kind of our area. Yeah. Can you explain just what that is and how it's being used?
Yeah, DMSO is fascinating, and I always laugh about it. I don't know why I laugh about it, because I think I'm laughing because people get so worked up about it, and I'm like, gosh, it's just such a really safe, not dangerous thing, but for some reason they get really worked up. I think because if they look it up online, it's classified as, quote, a solvent, and they equate solvent with this really horrible chemical type of thing. Solvent has different meanings, and I encourage people to look it up. And so it's really not a big deal. And so DMSO is a product that is created from pine trees. It was discovered, I don't know, a long time ago for various reasons in the wood pulp industry, actually, is how they started discovering it. And then later research and introducing it to the medical field. It's very non-toxic. It has the ability to eliminate certain heavy metals from the system. It's one of the best pain relievers and anti-inflammatories, either topical or internally. I have DMSO gel, and I've had that in my home probably 20 something years. My kids grew up understanding that if they had sore muscles, they can put DMSO gel on it. And it works really well for that. It's high in sulfur. So when you ingest it or put it on the body, sometimes it creates kind of a sulfur off-gassing. So some people get a smell to them that's a little strange. Some people it goes away. Some people don't get it. I don't typically get it. Other people do get it. It's common to get it. There are some kind of remedies to deal with that, to reduce that sulfur odor if it's happening. And it has some anti-cancer benefits. It's been shown to prevent tumor growth and to kill cancer cells and things like that. And it can be used alongside certain things to kind of potentiate their strength in the body or their effectiveness in the body. And also, like, say with Fenbendazol or other things like that, say Fenbendazol is not water soluble. So it's typically recommended, anything in the benzodol family is recommended that if we're taking it, we need to take it with food, and that food needs to have fat in it for it to be fully absorbed. But what a lot of people do is they use pure Fenbendazol and they'll mix it with some DMSO and something to drink, and they can activate it outside of digestion that way. And it also carries things across the blood-brain barriers. So for people who are dealing with, brain cancers such as like glioblastoma, neuroblastoma, etc., there's other ones. We want to make sure that everything's going across the blood-brain barrier. So sometimes we have them take things with DMSO to cross the blood-brain barrier. There are places in the US and throughout the world that give DMSO right alongside IV infusions of various vitamins. Let's say someone's receiving an infusion of curcumin, which comes from the turmeric plant. I'm just using that as an example. There's a lot of IV infusions of vitamins, and they add DMSO to that IV infusion along with it. It's going to drive it deeper in the cells. There are places in Mexico and Europe, and there used to be places in the US. I don't think that any of them are in operation anymore that actually gave chemotherapy with DMSO to drive it deeper into the cells. And so it amplifies things. If you take it with something, it'll make it more effective, more just amplified in the system. So you gotta be careful not to take it with certain things. There's some things we don't want to amplify. Like we want to make sure that we have the right dose of certain pharmaceuticals and not get ourselves sick or hurt. But with a lot of things, it's a good thing, actually. It makes it more effective, you get more out of it, and you don't have to rely on digestion. And the reality is, most people have some weaknesses in their digestion, so they're not always getting the full benefits of everything, where DMSO can bypass that. It's kind of like a liposomal formula. It's not reliant on digestion or food or things like that. It has its own way of activating in the system.
It's so cool. I can definitely attest to the whole muscle soreness or, like a little tennis elbow or something going on. And then one thing that I've been absolutely fascinated, because we are down in the South here in Arkansas, and we have mosquitoes everywhere. And a little bit of that on a mosquito bite takes the itch away almost instantly. It's fascinating.
I didn't know. I never tried that before.
I just kind of got tired of itching one day, and I had it there, and I just rubbed it all over my leg, and it was gone. And so I've been using it for a while since. Yeah. But I did want to know from your perspective how you were using it with some of the other, recommendations y'all have.
Yeah, and I've seen it. I'll say this. I like another thing I really, really love that has many, many uses, and I think it's an important and valuable thing, is castor oil. And I've seen the combination of DMSO and castor oil treat many things like hemorrhoids, seborrheic acne, all kinds of skin issues and rashes and all kinds of stuff that together they work really, really well. Because they're anti-inflammatory. The castor oil has all its own benefits. DMSO has its own benefits. It kind of amplifies the castor oil. But yeah, I recommend that mixture for various things for people quite often.
It's going to be another rabbit trail you're going to send me down, isn't it? I've been
the castor oil rabbit trail too.
Do it. All right, Zahrah, let us know how we can contact you on if you want to learn more, say about Fenbendazol or you working with you specifically. Where can we send people?
Well, I have my own website. It's pretty simple. It's my name, zahrahsita.com, zahrahsita.com. And through there, you can see the various services that I offer. Mostly, I do consulting and coaching with people. I help develop, various healing plans for them. I usually like to start people with what I call health consultation. It's a pretty in-depth meeting. I create a very detailed document that follows up that meeting. And then yet I meet with a lot of people ongoing, and that's what the coaching sessions are for, is ongoing support and help throughout their journey. And then I also offer a detox, a full body detox program that for people that really want to do a deep cleanse and go through. It's a several week program actually that goes through cleaning the blood, the organs, all kinds of stuff, down to the cellular level. And so those are the main things I offer on my website. You can also get a hold of me through my website. There's a chat option, if you need to ask me some questions or something like that, or ask about, various services. And then online, I run a couple private Facebook groups, such as the Fenbendazol group, which is Fenbendazol Cancer Support Group. And it's a big group. We have a great leadership team. I'm not the only person that is on that leadership team. We have some other people that are also health professionals, and also a lot of people who've healed cancer by doing alternative and integrative means. And then I run another group that I created several years back called Love Body Detox, which is a group dedicated to holistic living, natural healing, alternative healing. It's how to create a healthy home. I share a lot of recipes. We talk about supplements, detoxification, all kinds of stuff, like whatever really falls into the realm of holistic health. We talk about it in there. And so those are the main places to find me. I do help run some retreats with a private group of people several times a year. And sometimes I, share that publicly, or if you're really interested, you can always contact me privately to learn more. And so those are, I'd say, the main ways to contact me, to find me. That's where I am most of the time.
Awesome. Awesome. I've been a part of the Fenbendazol Cancer Support Group for years now, and the amount of people that absolutely love you and have worked with you and just vouch for you and trust you is incredible. It is a lot of people, and so I can't thank you enough for taking the time to help, clarify some things for me and continue to dive in. And I think we probably need to visit again at some point on the whole detox. I think that's worthy of a podcast in itself. So just thank you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the work that you do. And I'll continue sending people your way.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me. It's these conversations are important. I think it's important that people know there's a lot of options out there, and that they have choices, and they're really not alone. And there's people like us who have been through these journeys, whether it's, you with your child, or me and myself, or working with other people, just to get that word out there, that people know that there are options for them, and I think that's really important. And so thank you for inviting me. It's been an honor for sure.
Zahrah really is incredible, a wealth of knowledge, and truly loved and appreciated. I know that, I definitely know firsthand that this can be overwhelming, getting so many different recommendations on what you should do or what somebody did, and if my family member did this or didn't do that. And it's really important to have a support group that is vetted, has been through it, not just taking random advice from anywhere. And so, going to some of those resources that we mentioned are really important. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this interview, break it down, all of the products that we talked about. I'm very, very familiar with and have used the vast majority of them in different ways. But we're going to break it down in the Sowing Prosperity Institute. We're going to show you the resources, the studies that they go with, and make sure that you're able to make a informed decision. And maybe you take it to your oncologist or doctor, and we're going to make it really easy, because that is what Sowing Prosperity is all about. It's not just agriculture, not just building community. It's the personal health. It's the personal optimization that really matters. And overcoming some of these adversities in life is part of that.
Thank you for listening to the Sowing Prosperity podcast. We hope that you have learned something new and that you are inspired to adopt regenerative practices in your community. Remember that by working together, we can create a sustainable and abundant future for ourselves and for future generations.